Imagine waking without urgency, without the artificial intrusion of alarms or schedules, without the quiet anxiety of unfinished tasks pressing at the edges of consciousness. For the vast majority of human existence, waking was not an event imposed by technology, but a gradual return to awareness guided by light, temperature, sound, and the presence of others. Around 40,000 years ago, give or take several millennia, this experience defined daily life for Homo sapiens across Africa, Europe, and Asia. These humans were not proto-people or half-formed ancestors, struggling toward modernity. Anatomically and cognitively, they were fully human, possessing brains identical in size and structure to ours, capable of abstract thought, language, emotional depth, humor, memory, imagination, and creativity. What separated them from us was not intelligence or potential, but environment, technology, and the social rhythms shaped by a world untouched by agriculture, industry, or digital time. The early morning light filtering into a rock shelter or cave was not merely illumination, but information. It marked safety, opportunity, and continuity. The night, with its predators and uncertainties, had passed. Everyone who had gone to sleep was still alive. This simple fact carried immense emotional weight. Survival in the Paleolithic was not taken for granted. It was earned daily through cooperation, vigilance, and accumulated knowledge passed down over countless generations. The first sensations of the morning were physical rather than abstract. The cold air on exposed skin, the faint warmth radiating from embers of the fire, the smell of smoke mingled with animal fat, stone, earth, and human bodies. These smells were not signs of neglect or discomfort, but signals of belonging, of continuity, of life sustained through shared effort. Sleep itself followed patterns largely erased by modern artificial lighting. Evidence from ethnographic studies of contemporary hunter-gatherers and physiological research suggests that Paleolithic humans practiced segmented or polyphasic sleep. Rather than sleeping in one uninterrupted block, they slept in cycles, waking naturally during the night. These waking periods were not experienced as dysfunction or insomnia, but as calm interludes for quiet conversation, intimacy, reflection, fire maintenance, and vigilance. This pattern ensured that at almost any moment, someone was awake to detect danger, tend children, or respond to unexpected events. Safety was communal, not institutional. There were no walls, locks, or alarms, only awareness and trust in one another. Fire was central to this rhythm. Maintaining it was among the most vital responsibilities within any group. Fire provided warmth, protection from predators, light for social interaction, a means to cook food, and a focal point for shared life. Allowing it to go out entirely could mean hours or days of effort to rekindle it, often involving physically exhausting friction methods or dangerous journeys to borrow embers from other groups. As a result, responsibility for the fire was informally shared, often taken on by elders who slept lightly, young adults without children, or whoever happened to wake during the night. This distribution of responsibility reflects a broader pattern in Paleolithic society. Survival tasks were integrated into daily life rather than compartmentalized into jobs or roles enforced by hierarchy. As dawn progressed, children were usually the first to wake fully. Their energy and curiosity mirrored those of modern children, challenging the myth that prehistoric childhood was universally grim or joyless. While life was undeniably more dangerous, children were not treated as fragile burdens, but as active members of the group, learning through play, observation, and participation. Their games, unstructured and physical, built strength, coordination, and social skills essential for adult life. Adults watched with relaxed attentiveness, intervening only when necessary. There was no expectation that children be constantly productive. Play was recognized instinctively as preparation for life. Adults emerged from sleep more slowly. There was no pressure to begin work immediately. No external authority measuring productivity. Time itself was experienced differently. Without clocks or calendars, life was organized around cycles, day and night, seasons, animal migrations, plant ripening, weather patterns. The concept of being late or behind would have been incomprehensible. Instead, people moved when conditions were right, conserving energy when they were not. This approach was not laziness, but biological efficiency. Calories were precious. Wasting energy through unnecessary exertion could mean the difference between survival and death during lean times. Morning routines involved stretching stiff muscles, tending to bodily needs, and assessing the environment. Someone with experience, often an elder or skilled tracker, would examine the surroundings for signs of change. Fresh animal tracks near camp could signal opportunity or danger. The behavior of birds might indicate predators. Shifts in wind direction carried scents and sounds that conveyed information about distant events. Weather forecasting was not superstition, but a refined observational science built on intimate knowledge of local ecosystems. This information was shared openly within the group, forming the basis for decisions made collectively rather than imposed by leaders. Leadership in Paleolithic societies was situational and expertise-based. Individuals followed those with relevant knowledge: hunters during hunts, healers during illness, elders during disputes or rituals. Authority was fluid, temporary, and dependent on trust rather than coercion. Decisions about where to forage or hunt emerged through discussion and consensus. Disagreements were resolved through negotiation or, if necessary, by splitting temporarily into smaller groups. The absence of rigid hierarchy reduced internal conflict and fostered cooperation, essential for small bands where every individual mattered. Food acquisition, the central economic activity of Paleolithic life, did not dominate the entire day. Contrary to popular portrayals of constant desperation, archaeological and ethnographic evidence indicates that hunter-gatherers typically spent 4 to 6 hours per day on subsistence activities. This included hunting, gathering, food preparation, tool maintenance, and shelter upkeep. The remainder of the day was devoted to rest, socializing, storytelling, art, music, and play. By modern standards, this represented an abundance of leisure time, challenging deeply ingrained assumptions about progress and productivity. The morning meal, if one can even call it that, was opportunistic rather than scheduled. There was no concept of breakfast, lunch, or dinner. People ate when food was available and hunger demanded it. If leftover meat remained from a previous hunt, it was consumed before spoiling. Preservation techniques such as drying, smoking, or storing meat in cold environments extended its usability, but waste was minimized. Every calorie mattered. A strip of dried or slightly aged meat required significant chewing, strengthening jaws and teeth. Dental evidence from Paleolithic skulls shows extensive wear, reflecting diets rich in tough, fibrous foods, rather than the soft, processed items common today. Plant foods played an equally important role. Fruits, nuts, roots, tubers, seeds, and leaves provided carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals. Knowledge of edible plants was extensive and precise. Mistakes could be fatal, so this information was carefully transmitted across generations. Gathering was often done in small groups, frequently by women, though rigid gender roles varied widely by culture and environment. Children accompanied adults, learning through participation rather than instruction. Food sharing was universal. Hoarding made little sense in mobile societies, where survival depended on reciprocity. Generosity increased social bonds and ensured support during times of illness or injury. As the day progressed, those involved in hunting might prepare weapons and coordinate plans. Hunting was dangerous and required cooperation, planning, and skill. Injuries were common, but archaeological evidence of healed fractures and disabilities indicates that injured individuals were cared for rather than abandoned. This care represents a profound expression of empathy and social obligation. Survival was not purely individual. It was collective. The success of the group depended on protecting its members, even when they could no longer contribute equally. Between subsistence activities, time was spent on cultural expression. Paleolithic art, once dismissed as primitive, is now recognized as sophisticated and symbolically rich. Cave paintings, carved figurines, decorated tools, body adornments, and musical instruments reveal complex belief systems and aesthetic sensibilities. These creations required time, planning, and skill, further undermining the myth of constant struggle. People invested energy in beauty and meaning because these were essential aspects of being human, not luxuries. Storytelling played a central role in transmitting knowledge, values, and identity. Around fires, people shared accounts of hunts, migrations, ancestors, spirits, and dreams. These stories reinforced group cohesion and provided frameworks for understanding the world. Humor was present, as evidenced by playful carvings and exaggerated figures. Laughter strengthened bonds and relieved tension. Spirituality, though diverse and difficult to reconstruct, was deeply embedded in daily life. Burials with grave goods suggest beliefs about death, continuity, and perhaps an afterlife. Mourning was communal, recognizing loss as both personal and collective. As evening approached, activity slowed. People returned from foraging or hunting, sharing what they had acquired. Meals were communal events, reinforcing equality and cooperation. Conflicts, if they arose, were addressed through discussion or ritual rather than violence. Maintaining harmony was essential in small groups, where prolonged hostility could be fatal. Elders played key roles as mediators and repositories of knowledge. Age was respected, not merely for survival skills, but for wisdom accumulated through experience. Night brought vulnerability, but also intimacy. The fire was fed, stories told, children settled. The group gathered close for warmth and safety. Stars filled the sky, unobscured by artificial light. The night sky was not a distant abstraction, but a familiar presence, likely integrated into myth and navigation. Sleep came gradually, punctuated by wakeful intervals that maintained awareness and connection. Life expectancy in the Paleolithic was lower than today, largely due to high infant mortality and lack of medical treatment for infections. However, individuals who survived childhood often lived into their 50s or 60s, and sometimes longer. Within those years, lives were full. People experienced love, grief, joy, frustration, pride, and curiosity. They were not merely surviving, but living richly within the constraints of their environment. Understanding how early humans spent their days forces a re-evaluation of modern assumptions about progress. While technological advancements have brought undeniable benefits, they have also introduced chronic stress, time scarcity, social isolation, and disconnection from natural rhythms. The Paleolithic way of life was not idyllic or free from suffering, but it was balanced in ways that resonate deeply with human biology and psychology. The desire to wake slowly, to share meals, to spend time with loved ones, to create art, to tell stories, to feel connected to something larger than oneself. These are not nostalgic fantasies, but echoes of an evolutionary past that shaped who we are. Study in prehistoric life does more than illuminate history. It challenges us to question the structures of modern existence and consider what it truly means to live well. In the end, the ordinary day of a human 40,000 years ago was neither a constant struggle nor a primitive void. It was a life organized around cooperation, awareness, and meaning, guided by the sun and sustained by community. It reminds us that humanity did not begin with cities, writing, or machines. It began with people waking together at dawn, sharing warmth, sharing food, sharing stories, and facing the world not alone, but together. The microscopic evidence locked within ancient teeth tells a story far richer than early archaeology ever imagined. For much of the 20th century, the prevailing image of Paleolithic humans centered on meat-heavy diets, dominated by dramatic hunts and heroic kills. Yet dental wear patterns, once thought to reflect an almost exclusively carnivorous existence, reveal something far more complex. Heavy abrasion on enamel initially suggested relentless meat chewing, but closer analysis shows that this wear also results from the processing of tough plant materials, grit introduced during grinding, and fibrous roots and seeds that demanded powerful jaws and constant use. Teeth were tools as much as they were biological structures, shaped by a lifetime of work. What is most revealing, however, is not simply the wear itself, but what remains trapped within it. Microscopic plant residues preserved for tens of thousands of years, offering direct evidence of what early humans actually ate. When scientists examine Paleolithic teeth under high-powered microscopes, they find starch grains from roots and tubers, phytoliths from seeds and nuts, and residues from grasses, fruits, and leafy plants. These traces do not belong to a species surviving solely on meat scavenged from carcasses. They belong to omnivores with astonishing dietary breadth. Early humans consumed whatever their environment offered, combining animal protein with a diverse array of plant foods that provided carbohydrates, fiber, micronutrients, and medicinal compounds. This omnivory was not incidental. It was strategic. It allowed human groups to thrive across radically different ecosystems, from icy steppe to dense forest, from river valleys to coastal plains. Dietary flexibility was not merely advantageous, it was the foundation of human expansion across the globe. The morning meal in a Paleolithic camp reflects this diversity with quiet efficiency. There is no single centerpiece, no dominant dish, no hierarchy of foods. Meat may be present, but it is accompanied by nuts gathered days earlier, berries dried during seasons of abundance, and roots harvested with careful knowledge of soil, water, and timing. A simple wooden container fashioned from folded bark and sealed with pine resin holds hazelnuts, cracked skillfully using back molars, hardened by years of similar labor. This technique is not improvised. It is learned through observation beginning in infancy. Children watch adults crack nuts with practiced precision, learning how to apply pressure at the correct angle to split the shell without destroying the meat inside. Mastery of such seemingly small skills determines whether calories are wasted or preserved, whether effort yields nourishment or frustration. Nearby dried berries, blackberries, gathered during late summer are consumed in handfuls. Their sweetness is intensified by dehydration, providing immediate energy that spikes blood glucose and fuels the body for the tasks ahead. This rapid energy source complements the slower burning calories from fats and proteins, creating a balanced nutritional intake long before the concept of macronutrients existed. Paleolithic humans may not have articulated nutritional science, but their bodies and cultural knowledge evolved in perfect alignment with it. The combination of foods consumed reflects an intuitive understanding of balance accumulated through thousands of generations of lived experience. Perhaps the most remarkable element of the morning meal is the basket of roots placed near the fire. These roots, cattail tubers dug from riverbanks, abundant, calorie-dense, and nutritionally valuable, but dangerous if consumed raw. Containing toxins and indigestible fibers, they require careful processing to become safe. The roots are not cooked aggressively or rapidly. Instead, they are placed close to the fire, exposed to residual heat over many hours. This slow roasting transforms complex starches into simpler sugars, breaks down fibrous structures, and neutralizes harmful compounds. This process exemplifies one of the most transformative technological breakthroughs in human history: the controlled use of fire to expand the edible landscape. Cooking did not merely make food taste better. It fundamentally altered human evolution by increasing the range of edible plants and improving nutrient absorption. Cooking allowed humans to extract more energy from their environment with less effort. It reduced chewing time, eased digestion, and freed metabolic energy for brain development. Tubers, once toxic, became staples. Seeds that passed through the gut, undigested, became valuable when ground and heated. Fire effectively multiplied available food resources, supporting larger populations and enabling longer lifespans. The slow-roasted roots eaten at dawn are not humble fare. They are the result of cumulative innovation spanning hundreds of thousands of years. Evidence for this dietary diversity does not rely solely on teeth. Fossilized feces, known as coprolites, recovered from archaeological sites across Europe and Africa, provide direct snapshots of ancient meals. Under microscopic analysis, coprolites reveal an astonishing variety of plant remains: seeds from dozens of species, pollen grains from flowering plants, fragments of leaves, bark, roots, and even traces of insects. Grasshoppers, beetle, larvae, termites, and other invertebrates appear frequently. Though unappealing to many modern Western sensibilities, insects are nutritionally dense, rich in protein and fat, and widely consumed by contemporary hunter-gatherer societies. There is no reason to believe Paleolithic humans regarded them differently. Food taboos are cultural constructs, not biological imperatives. Dental calculus, the hardened plaque that accumulates on teeth, corroborates this picture. When archaeologists scrape calculus from ancient skulls, they uncover microfossils representing wild grains, nuts, berries, tubers, and plant fibers likely chewed for moisture, extraction, or tool-making preparation. These findings dismantle the myth of a narrowly specialized Paleolithic diet. Instead, they reveal humans as consummate generalists, capable of exploiting nearly any edible resource within their environment. This flexibility was not casual or accidental. It was learned, maintained, and refined through careful observation and cultural transmission. Such adaptability proved essential in a world defined by uncertainty. Climate shifts altered landscapes rapidly. Animal migrations changed routes. Droughts, floods, and cold snaps disrupted predictable patterns. A group dependent on only one or two food sources would face starvation when those resources failed. Groups capable of consuming dozens, sometimes hundreds of different foods could survive almost anywhere. Coastal populations supplemented their diets with fish, shellfish, seaweed, seabirds, and marine mammals. Forest dwellers relied on deer, wild boar, nuts, berries, mushrooms, and roots. Riverine communities exploited fish, waterfowl, aquatic plants, and the animals drawn to drink. Everywhere humans went, they learned to eat the land itself. Food consumption was never solitary. Eating alone was rare and culturally discouraged. Meals were shared, distributed according to deeply ingrained social rules, understood implicitly by all members of the group. A successful hunter did not claim ownership over an animal. The kill belonged to the group. In many cases, the hunter ate no more and, sometimes less than others. This system of sharing functioned as risk insurance. When one individual failed, others succeeded. Over time, generosity ensured survival. Hoarding made no sense in a world where mobility was essential and spoilage inevitable. Social cohesion mattered more than individual accumulation. Children moved freely among adults, sampling food from many hands, learning tastes, textures, and techniques. Adults ensured children were fed first during scarcity. If food was insufficient, adults reduced their own intake. This prioritization reflects not sentimentality, but evolutionary logic. Children represented the future of the group. Their survival mattered more than short-term adult comfort. Food sharing reinforced bonds, trust, and mutual dependence, weaving survival into the fabric of daily interaction. As people ate, conversation flowed. Information was exchanged alongside calories. Observations about plant abundance, animal tracks, weather patterns, and resource locations shaped plans for the day. Decisions emerged organically. There were no orders, no centralized authority. Individuals volunteered based on expertise, interest, and physical capacity. Someone mentioned hazelnut trees producing well in the northern grove. Several women and older children agreed to investigate. Another noted deer tracks near the river. Hunters exchanged glances, mentally preparing. Food preparation continued throughout these discussions. Hands were rarely idle. Grinding stones turned seeds into coarse flour. Herbs were sorted carefully, mold discarded. Teenagers practiced slicing meat with flint flakes, learning precision and patience. Skill transmission occurred entirely through observation and repetition. There were no written instructions, no formal lessons. Children watched, imitated, failed, corrected themselves, and tried again. Over years, this process produced adults with encyclopedic knowledge of their environment. Ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherers demonstrate that individuals often possess detailed information about 200 to 300 plant species. They know which parts are edible, which require processing, which are medicinal, which are toxic, and which serve non-food purposes, such as cordage, tools, or poison. Paleolithic humans almost certainly possessed similar knowledge. They had too. Mistakes could be fatal. This knowledge base was not abstract. It was contextual, seasonal, and spatial. Plants changed appearance across the year. Leaves emerged, flowers bloomed, fruits ripened, roots swelled, seeds dropped. Identifying a plant in spring required different cues than identifying it in autumn. Stories helped encode this information. Elders recounted incidents of illness caused by misidentification, emphasizing subtle distinctions. The number of veins in a leaf, the shape of a stem, the smell released when crushed. These narratives were not folklore for entertainment. They were survival manuals encoded in memory. As the morning meal concluded, attention returned to the fire. Embers were fed carefully, protected from wind and moisture. Fire maintenance was a continuous responsibility, rotating among group members. Allowing it to extinguish completely was costly and dangerous. Fire was warmth, protection, and transformation. It made food safe, tools stronger, nights survivable. Its importance cannot be overstated. With stomachs reasonably full and energy restored, the day's primary activities began. Contrary to popular imagination, hunting was not the dominant daily task. Gathering was the backbone of Paleolithic survival. On most days, 60 to 80% of calories came from plant foods. Hunting provided dramatic surges of protein and fat, but it was unreliable. Plants were predictable. They stayed rooted, grew in known locations, and followed seasonal rhythms that could be learned and anticipated. While hunters pursued opportunity, gatherers ensured continuity. Gathering expeditions were neither aimless nor trivial. They required extensive planning, physical endurance, and acute attention. A typical gathering group might travel 5 to 10 miles in a day over challenging terrain, carrying tools, containers, and sometimes children, a digging stick hardened by fire, woven baskets nested for transport, leather pouches for small items, and stone knives constituted the essential toolkit. The work demanded patience rather than adrenaline. Success depended on the ability to read subtle signs: soil coloration indicating buried tubers, bird behavior suggesting fruiting trees, slope orientation determining ripeness. Older women often played central roles in gathering, particularly those beyond childbearing age. Their accumulated knowledge made them invaluable. Far from being marginalized, post-reproductive women may have been among the most critical contributors to group survival. They identified plants, taught distinctions between edible and lethal species, and preserved cultural memory. Modern anthropological research supports this, suggesting that the presence of knowledgeable elders significantly improves group survival rates. Gender roles in gathering and hunting were flexible and pragmatic. While some societies exhibited patterns where women gathered and men hunted, this was neither universal nor rigid. Archaeological evidence reveals women buried with hunting weapons, and isotope analysis showing women consuming meat-heavy diets. Some groups practiced communal hunting, involving all adults. Others specialized individuals, regardless of sex. Labor organization responded to ecological demands rather than ideology. During a gathering expedition, learning never stopped. A child carried on the back absorbed rhythms of movement and observation unconsciously. Older children practiced identifying plants, listening to stories explaining subtle differences. When an elder demonstrated how to extract a tuber, she also explained the consequences of error. A nearly identical plant with 3 veins instead of 5 could cause respiratory failure within hours. Such lessons were etched into memory through fear, narrative, and repetition. Hours passed in steady motion. Streams were crossed. Mushrooms were inspected cautiously, collected selectively. Wild grapes, grass seeds, medicinal bark, and edible leaves filled baskets gradually. Every item collected represented not only calories, but time, energy, and risk, assessed carefully. By midday, baskets grew heavy. The return journey was slower, burdened by weight but enriched by success. This rhythm wake, eat, gather, share defined Paleolithic life, far more than moments of dramatic confrontation. It was quiet, attentive, communal, and deeply informed by intimate knowledge of the land. Survival did not depend on domination, but on relationship, with plants, animals, seasons, fire, and each other. Food was never just fuel. It was memory, identity, and connection. The act of cracking a nut, roasting a root, or sharing dried berries carried meaning beyond nutrition. These were experiences embedded in social bonds and ancestral continuity. Through food, people connected to landscapes that sustained them, and to generations who taught them how to survive within those landscapes. By understanding this daily reality, modern humans are forced to confront uncomfortable questions. Progress has given us abundance, yet stripped us of time. Convenience has replaced knowledge. We eat more calories than ever, but know less about where they come from. Paleolithic humans lived with constant risk, yet possessed a richness of connection and understanding that modern life often lacks. The story embedded in ancient teeth, coprolites, and stone tools is not one of brutish survival, but of profound adaptation. Early humans were not barely hanging on. They were thriving within limits, supported by cooperation, knowledge, and an intimate relationship with the natural world. Their lives were hard, but they were also full. And in understanding how they ate, how they gathered, and how they shared, we come closer to understanding what it has always meant to be human. Human survival for the vast majority of our species' existence did not hinge on moments of spectacle, dramatic violence, or constant crisis, but on quiet, disciplined knowledge accumulated slowly across generations and enacted daily through patient labor. The act of boiling plant leaves to make a fever-reducing tea may seem trivial to modern observers. Yet it represents the convergence of ecological literacy, cultural memory, and ethical restraint. The ant who gathers medicinal leaves without stripping the tree is not merely performing a task. She is participating in a system of sustainable resource management refined over tens of thousands of years. She understands, intuitively and experientially, that survival depends not on extraction, but on continuity. Her restraint reflects a worldview in which tomorrow matters as much as today, and where the well-being of future generations is embedded in daily decision-making. This form of sustainable harvesting predates written language, economic theory, or environmental science. Yet it embodies principles modern societies are still struggling to rediscover. Early humans did not need terminology to understand ecological limits. Failure to respect them resulted in immediate consequences: empty landscapes, depleted resources, and eventual starvation. Groups that learned to balance use with renewal endured. Those that did not vanished, leaving no descendants to tell their stories. As the gathering continues through the day, the physical strain becomes apparent. Miles from camp, baskets heavy, muscles aching, the work is nonetheless characterized by a deep sense of calm and presence. This is not frantic labor driven by deadlines or artificial urgency, but rhythmic movement synchronized with the environment. The steady pace of walking, bending, observing, and collecting creates a meditative state in which attention is fully engaged with the world. Every sense is active, ears attuned to birdsong and animal movement, eyes scanning for water, changes in vegetation, or signs of other human groups, noses detecting smoke or rain, skin registering shifts in sunlight and wind. This total sensory engagement represents a mode of being largely absent from modern life, where attention is fragmented and mediated through screens. For early humans, awareness was not optional or cultivated as mindfulness. It was the baseline state required for survival. Knowledge transfer occurs seamlessly within this context, woven into movement and conversation, rather than isolated into formal instruction. When a younger cousin encounters a plant with bright red berries, curiosity becomes an educational opportunity. The aunt does not simply classify the plant as safe or dangerous. Instead, she situates it within a narrative framework, recounting how her mother once relied on these berries during a harsh winter when other food sources failed. Through this story, multiple layers of information are conveyed: seasonal scarcity patterns, preparation methods required to make the berries safe for human consumption, physiological differences between species, and the dangers of improper use. This narrative method ensures retention because it embeds practical knowledge within emotionally resonant memory. The landscape thus becomes a living archive. Each plant, stone, and stream holds accumulated data, indexed not through writing, but through story, practice, and place. Early humans were not ignorant simply because they lacked written language. They possessed sophisticated ecological understanding, rivaling that of modern scientists, built through longitudinal observation across generations. By late afternoon, the gathered food weighs heavily in full baskets, and fatigue sets in. Feet ache, backs strain, infants cry for nourishment, yet there is satisfaction in work completed. This labor may not receive celebration or public recognition in the way a successful hunt does, but its importance is universally understood. Hunting, for all its drama, was unreliable. Hunters often returned empty-handed. Gathering, by contrast, provided consistent, dependable nutrition. It was the backbone of prehistoric subsistence, sustaining humanity for hundreds of thousands of years. The rhythm of daily gathering, rather than sporadic hunting success, defined human survival. This reality challenges modern narratives that glorify hunting as the primary driver of human evolution, while minimizing the critical role of women and gatherers whose labor ensured caloric stability. Contrary to popular depictions, early humans were not engaged in constant pursuit of large game. Hunting was an infrequent, high-risk, high-reward endeavor requiring extensive planning and cooperation. A successful hunt might occur every few days or even weeks. The rest of the time was spent preparing, tracking, maintaining tools, and relying on gathered food. When hunting did occur, it followed careful deliberation. Scouts observed animal movement patterns over days, noting migration routes, water sources, and seasonal behaviors. Decisions to hunt were strategic, dependent on weather conditions, group health, and the availability of experienced hunters. This methodical approach reflects advanced cognitive planning rather than impulsive aggression. The hunters themselves were equipped with tools representing remarkable technological sophistication. Spears were not crude weapons, but engineered instruments crafted through days or weeks of labor. Wooden shafts were fire-hardened and seasoned to prevent warping. Stone points were knapped from high quality, flints sourced through long-distance trade networks, extending hundreds of miles. Hafting involved complex adhesives made from plant resins, mixed with charcoal and bone, to create bonds stronger than many modern glues. The otlatl, or spear thrower, represented a revolutionary leap in hunting technology, increasing range and force through mechanical leverage. Each tool embodied accumulated experimentation and refinement passed down across generations. The hunt itself was characterized by patience rather than speed. Trackers read subtle signs in the landscape hoof, depth, spacing, disturbed soil to infer animal size, health, and behavior. This skill was not mystical, but the product of lifelong pattern recognition. Persistence hunting, a uniquely human strategy, leveraged endurance rather than strength. Humans could not outrun antelope in short bursts, but their ability to regulate body temperature through sweating allowed them to pursue prey over hours under intense heat. Cooperative rotation among hunters ensured sustained pressure, demonstrating advanced social coordination. Eventually, exhaustion overcame the animal, and the kill was made with precision rather than brutality. Following the kill, ritual acknowledgement reflected a moral relationship with prey. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans practiced forms of respect or gratitude toward animals, recognizing their role in sustaining human life. Butchering required anatomical expertise, ensuring nothing was wasted. Meat, organs, hide, sinew, and bone were all utilized. The challenge of transporting hundreds of pounds of resources necessitated social cooperation beyond the hunting party. Runners summoned reinforcements, fires deterred scavengers, and preservation techniques like smoking extended usability. Successful hunts became communal events, reinforcing social bonds through shared labor, feasting, storytelling, and memory formation. Despite their importance, hunts were rare successes amid many failures. This reality underscores why hunting was never humanity's primary food source. It provided concentrated nutrients and social cohesion, but gathering supplied the majority of calories. Human success stemmed from versatility rather than specialization. Early humans were generalists, capable of deploying specialized skills when necessary. Their adaptability allowed them to survive diverse environments and unpredictable conditions. Daily life within camp revolved around constant production and maintenance. Toolmaking was not occasional craftsmanship, but essential labor. Stone knapping required intimate knowledge of material properties, precise control of force and angle, and years of practice. The prepared core technique represented centuries of innovation. Hafting combined multiple materials into composite tools, reflecting advanced engineering principles. Antler and boneworking introduced different challenges and benefits, producing lighter, more flexible implements. Specialization emerged naturally as individuals honed specific skills, contributing to early forms of social differentiation and influence. Clothing production was equally complex. Hide processing involved scraping, tanning, smoking, and sewing using bone awls and needles. Brain tanning demonstrated empirical chemistry achieved without formal science. The invention of needles revolutionized clothing, enabling tailored garments essential for cold environments. Decoration through beads, carving, and ornamentation reflected identity, status, and aesthetic sensibility. These practices reveal that early humans valued beauty and self-expression alongside survival. Contrary to assumptions of relentless hardship, early humans enjoyed significant leisure time. Anthropological studies of modern foraging societies indicate adults spent only 4 to 6 hours daily on subsistence tasks. The remaining time was flexible, devoted to rest, social interaction, play, music, grooming, and storytelling. Leisure was not wasted time, but integral to physical recovery, social cohesion, and cultural transmission. Play functioned as education for children, fostering coordination, negotiation, and skill rehearsal. Games, music, and dance strengthened group identity and emotional resilience. Music, evidenced by ancient flutes and instruments, demonstrates deliberate artistic experimentation. Sound synchronized movement and emotion, reinforcing bonds and reducing anxiety. Storytelling preserved collective memory, encoding survival knowledge within narrative structures. Grooming and decoration fostered intimacy and belonging, reinforcing social ties essential for group survival. Body paint, jewelry, and hairstyle were not frivolous, but communicative symbols conveying affiliation and status. Together, these practices reveal a profound truth. Early human life was not defined solely by survival struggle, but by meaning, creativity, and connection. Survival was achieved not through constant violence, but through cooperation, patience, knowledge, and care for future generations. The steady, unglamorous work of gathering, toolmaking, teaching, resting, and storytelling formed the foundation of human civilization long before agriculture or cities emerged. Modern societies, for all their technological advancement, often overlook this heritage. Yet embedded within our biology and psychology remains the legacy of ancestors who read landscapes like libraries, valued sustainability over excess, and understood that survival was not just about staying alive, but about living well together in a complex, ever-changing world. For early humans living 40,000 years ago, much of life unfolded in ways that modern observers would struggle to recognize as meaningful activity at all. In between the obvious necessities of hunting, gathering, toolmaking, childcare, and shelter maintenance existed long stretches of time that were neither frantic nor productive by contemporary standards. These intervals were filled with watching, waiting, listening, and noticing. To lie on one's back and follow the slow drift of clouds across the sky was not a sign of idleness, but a form of engagement with the world that trained attention and perception. Sitting quietly to observe ants, carrying food back to their nest, or watching a distant herd of grazing animals cluster and scatter as the wind shifted. Their scent was not boredom, but education. Through such constant, gentle observation, early humans built intricate mental maps of their environment. They learned how landscapes changed with seasons, how animals behaved under different conditions, how subtle shifts in weather preceded storms, migrations, or scarcity. This way of knowing did not come from instruction manuals or deliberate lessons, but from immersion in time itself. In a world without written language, clocks, or external schedules, attention became one of humanity's most valuable tools. The person who had spent countless evenings watching the sky could notice an unusual cloud formation, signaling an approaching storm long before others sensed danger. The child who had followed animal tracks simply out of curiosity might grow into the band's most skilled tracker without ever being formally taught. Knowledge emerged organically from repeated exposure rather than structured education. Learning was experiential, cumulative, and deeply embodied. Silence and stillness were not empty states waiting to be filled with stimulation, but rich environments saturated with meaning. Without glowing screens or background noise, the world itself provided constant sensory input. The hum of insects, bird calls, marking territory or time of day, the sigh of wind through grass, the distant rush of water, the steady breathing of loved ones nearby. In such stillness, the boundary between self and environment thinned. Humans were not observers of nature, but participants embedded within it. This embeddedness shaped how early humans experienced time. Their days were not endless stretches of toil punctuated by brief rest, but rhythmic alternations between effort and ease. Hunting, gathering, and crafting required focus and energy, but they were balanced by joking, singing, dancing, grooming, storytelling, cloud watching, and stargazing. Although their lives were dangerous in ways modern lives generally are not, with illness, injury, and hunger always near, early humans possessed something increasingly rare today: long, unbroken stretches of time in which nothing urgent demanded attention. There were hours to let the mind wander, to be with others without an agenda, to simply remain awake in a living world. This spaciousness carried into sleep, following them as fires died down and stories faded into the night. Life at this time was never solitary. Humans lived in small bands, not villages or cities, but intimate groups, typically ranging from 20 to 40 individuals, rarely exceeding 50. This size was not accidental. Bands that were too small lacked sufficient defense, skill diversity, and genetic exchange. Bands that were too large became unstable, difficult to move, and prone to conflict. Over tens of thousands of years, natural selection, culture, and practicality converged on a social sweet spot, a living room-sized society where everyone knew every voice, laugh, and footstep in the dark. Individuals could recognize who was walking behind them by the scrape of a foot, or identify a cough in the night. Each person occupied a clear place in a shared mental map of relationships, where generosity, reliability, kindness, and selfishness were carefully remembered. These relationship maps were as critical to survival as fire or stone tools. Knowing who would share food during a bad hunt or quietly slip a child a piece of dried meat mattered as much as knowing where to find flint. Conflict inevitably arose in such close quarters. Someone took more meat than they earned, flirted with another's partner, or skipped their turn watching the fire. In a band this small, avoidance was impossible. You would be sleeping a few feet from that person at night. Yet early humans had no police, courts, or prisons. Instead, they relied on humanity's oldest social technologies: gossip, mediation, and reputation. Gossip was not idle chatter, but a form of social regulation. Stories of behavior circulated around the fire, shaping reputations and future treatment. A selfish act became a remembered narrative that influenced how others responded in times of need. Acts of bravery or kindness became social capital. When conflicts grew serious, elders played central roles. These were not judges issuing verdicts, but experienced mediators who remembered past disputes and resolutions. They spoke slowly, added context, reminded people of shared hardships and past kindnesses. Their goal was reconciliation, not punishment. In a band of 30, a feud could be fatal. Splitting the group weakened everyone, making them vulnerable to predators, hunger, and harsh seasons. As a result, social systems were biased toward restoring harmony. Teasing replaced accusation. Songs hinted at misbehavior without naming names. Indirect pressure allowed people to change without humiliation, preserving group cohesion. This interdependence began at birth. Children did not belong solely to nuclear families, but to the band as a whole. This system of cooperative breeding meant that care was distributed among parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, and unrelated adults absorbed into the social network. If a mother was injured, died, or needed to travel long distances, her child did not automatically perish. Other adults could nurse, carry, feed, and protect them. This redundancy created a powerful safety net and allowed individuals to specialize. Some adults excelled at patient teaching, others at physical play, others at emotional comfort. By adolescence, children had learned from a village's worth of teachers, each passing on fragments of knowledge inherited from previous generations. Relationships within these bands were varied and flexible. There was no single prehistoric marriage model. Some groups likely favored long-term pair bonds, while others practiced more fluid arrangements shaped by environment and necessity. Polygyny or polyandry may have existed where resource sharing required broader alliances. What remained constant was the need to manage jealousy, protect children, and distribute resources fairly. Cultural taboos, joking relationships, and unspoken rules acted as emotional traffic signals guiding desire and responsibility. Beyond the band lay a wider social world. Other groups speaking related languages or dialects were encountered periodically, often during seasonal gatherings when resources were abundant. These events functioned as festivals where trade, information exchange, and mating occurred. Objects such as shells, obsidian, ochre, and carved tools traveled hundreds of miles through chains of exchange. These gatherings prevented inbreeding and allowed ideas to spread across vast landscapes. Innovations in hunting techniques, toolmaking, or survival strategies rippled outward through oral communication rather than written records. All of this depended on one extraordinary adaptation: language. By 40,000 years ago, human languages were almost certainly as complex as those spoken today. They allowed detailed descriptions of past events, future plans, hypothetical dangers, and abstract ideas. Language enabled coordination of complex hunts, transmission of ecological knowledge, and sharing of myths, dreams, jokes, and lullabies. Elders, in particular, became living libraries. Though their bodies aged and weakened, their accumulated knowledge grew more valuable with time. They remembered past famines, floods, migrations, and conflicts. Losing an elder was like losing a library to fire. Death, when it came, was treated with care and ritual. Archaeological evidence reveals deliberate burials with bodies arranged thoughtfully, sometimes dusted with red ochre and accompanied by tools, ornaments, and food. These practices suggest beliefs about continuity beyond death, whether in another realm as animal spirits or as watchers over the living. Mourning disrupted daily routines, drawing people closer together. Stories about the deceased preserved memory and meaning. Death was not treated as nothing, but as a profound transition woven into social life. As daylight faded, attention shifted toward fire, the central anchor of evening life. Fire was not merely a tool, but a boundary between safety and danger. Around it, people returned from the day's activities, bringing food, wood, and stories. Evening meals became social performances, where generosity and reputation were on display. Food distribution followed cultural rules that reinforced cooperation. Conversation deepened as practical daytime communication gave way to reflection, planning, and storytelling. Children learned not only facts, but how decisions were made and conflicts resolved. As night deepened, stories expanded outward and upward, incorporating the sky. Under dark, unpolluted heavens, stars became narratives, calendars, and guides. Patterns were traced, meanings assigned. The sky offered order in an uncertain world. Night, however, remained dangerous. Predators lurked beyond firelight. Vigilance was shared through light sleepers, rotating watch, and eventually animals that would become dogs. Early domestication created partnerships that enhanced safety and warmth, binding human and animal lives together. Sleep itself was communal and structured. Bedding was carefully constructed from grasses, leaves, and hides, arranged according to social relationships. These sleeping patterns reflected status, affection, and alliance. As people settled into rest, layers of protection surrounded them. Knowledge of the landscape, fire, community, and watchful animals. Though vulnerable, they were also deeply secure within these networks. Beneath all this practical life flowed a rich inner world expressed through art and spirituality. Cave paintings deep underground, body decoration with ochre and beads, carved figurines, music, and trance all testify to humanity's need to make sense of existence. These expressions were not hobbies, but essential technologies for meaning-making. Art and ritual bonded groups, encoded knowledge, and provided frameworks for understanding life, death, and the forces shaping the world. Music and rhythm dissolved individual boundaries, creating shared emotional states that strengthened social cohesion. Trance experiences offered altered perspectives and reinforced belief systems. Spirituality was not separate from survival, but intertwined with it, providing moral guidance, emotional resilience, and communal identity. When all these elements are considered together, early human life emerges not as a grim struggle, but as a balanced rhythm of work and rest, danger and safety, silence and song. Their days were shaped by walking, watching, talking, and doing, punctuated by laughter and long moments of stillness. Modern societies, despite technological abundance, often lack this balance. We have replaced silence with noise and unstructured time with constant urgency. Modern assumptions about human progress often rest on a quiet but powerful belief that comfort, security, and meaning have increased in a straight line from the past to the present. Yet the deeper archaeology and anthropology dig into Paleolithic life, the more that belief begins to fracture. 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens lived without cities, agriculture, money, clocks, or writing. Yet they inhabited a world dense with knowledge, meaning, and social connection. Their lives were not defined by endless struggle or ignorance, but by a refined balance between effort and rest, danger and safety, individuality and collective responsibility. To understand this world is not merely to study prehistory, but to confront enduring questions about what it means to live well. Daily life in the Paleolithic unfolded at a pace dictated by the environment rather than by abstract schedules. Time was not segmented into hours or minutes, but experienced as a flowing continuum shaped by daylight, hunger, weather, and social rhythms. Waking was not abrupt, but gradual, guided by dawn light filtering into shelters, the warmth of nearby bodies, and the subtle sounds of a group returning to consciousness together. This shared awakening carried emotional significance. Survival through the night was never guaranteed, and each morning represented a collective success. The simple fact that everyone was still alive reaffirmed bonds of trust and cooperation that had been forged through countless nights of shared vulnerability. This communal rhythm extended into sleep itself. Paleolithic humans did not sleep in a single, uninterrupted block, but followed segmented or polyphasic patterns, waking naturally during the night. These waking periods were not disorders to be corrected, but functional adaptations that enhanced safety and social cohesion. Someone was almost always awake to tend the fire, comfort children, or listen for danger. Safety was maintained not through structures or technology, but through shared awareness and mutual responsibility. This mode of living required trust, attentiveness, and emotional intelligence, qualities as essential to survival as physical strength. Fire anchored this entire system. More than a tool, it was the heart of Paleolithic life. It transformed food, extended daylight, deterred predators, enabled social interaction, and shaped human biology itself. Fire maintenance was not a specialized job, but a shared obligation, woven into daily existence. Responsibilities shifted naturally among elders, young adults, and anyone awake during the night. This fluid distribution of labor reflected a broader pattern. Tasks were integrated into life rather than compartmentalized into roles enforced by hierarchy. Survival depended on cooperation, not command. As morning progressed, children emerged as the most visibly energetic members of the group. Their play, physical, imaginative, and unstructured, was not tolerated reluctantly, but understood instinctively as essential preparation for adult life. Through play, children developed coordination, strength, social negotiation skills, and environmental familiarity. Adults observed with relaxed attentiveness, intervening only when necessary. Childhood was not sheltered in the modern sense, but neither was it joyless. Despite real dangers, Paleolithic childhood allowed for freedom, exploration, and learning through participation rather than formal instruction. Adults, by contrast, transitioned into wakefulness slowly. There was no pressure to begin the day at a specific time. Without artificial urgency, energy was conserved and deployed only when conditions demanded it. This conservation was not laziness, but metabolic wisdom. Calories were precious. Unnecessary exertion could have fatal consequences during periods of scarcity. Paleolithic humans understood, implicitly and experientially, that rest was not the opposite of productivity, but its foundation. Morning activities often included environmental assessment. Experienced individuals examined tracks, weather patterns, wind direction, and animal behavior, interpreting subtle signs that revealed information about opportunity and risk. This observational skill constituted a form of scientific literacy rooted in long-term ecological engagement. Knowledge was not abstracted into data, but embedded in lived experience. Information was shared openly, and decisions emerged through discussion rather than command. Leadership was situational, based on expertise rather than authority, and dissolved once its purpose had been served. Food acquisition, while essential, did not dominate the entire day. Ethnographic and archaeological evidence consistently shows that hunter-gatherers spent only a portion of their time, often 4 to 6 hours, daily in subsistence activities. The remainder was devoted to rest, social interaction, tool maintenance, storytelling, art, and play. This abundance of unstructured time challenges modern narratives that equate technological advancement with increased leisure. In terms of free time and psychological spaciousness, Paleolithic humans may have been wealthier than many modern people. Dietary evidence further undermines simplistic portrayals of prehistoric life. Microscopic analysis of teeth, dental calculus, and coprolites reveals a diverse omnivorous diet rich in plant foods, including roots, tubers, seeds, nuts, fruits, and leaves, supplemented by meat, fish, and insects. Cooking, enabled by fire, expanded the edible landscape and increased caloric efficiency, supporting brain development and population growth. Food was not consumed according to rigid meal schedules, but opportunistically guided by availability and hunger. Food sharing was universal and governed by deeply ingrained social rules. A successful hunt did not confer ownership but obligation. Meat and gathered foods were distributed across the group, reinforcing bonds of reciprocity and ensuring collective survival. Hoarding made little sense in mobile societies where spoilage was inevitable and future survival depended on social support. Children were prioritized during scarcity, reflecting both emotional attachment and evolutionary logic. Through these practices, food became more than sustenance. It became a medium of social cohesion, trust, and moral obligation. Gathering, often underestimated in popular narratives, was the backbone of Paleolithic survival. It provided consistent, reliable calories and required extensive ecological knowledge. Older women, in particular, played central roles as repositories of botanical knowledge and cultural memory. Far from being marginalized, elders were indispensable. Their understanding of plant cycles, medicinal uses, and sustainable harvesting practices significantly increased group survival. This respect for age reflects a value system in which wisdom accumulated through experience was as important as physical strength. Hunting, while dramatic and symbolically powerful, was comparatively rare and risky. It required advanced planning, cooperation, and technological sophistication. Tools such as spears, outlots, and composite weapons embodied centuries of accumulated innovation. Successful hunts were communal achievements, followed by collective labor in processing, preservation, and distribution. Yet hunting success was unpredictable, reinforcing the importance of dietary flexibility and cooperative sharing. Beyond subsistence, Paleolithic life was rich in cultural expression. Artifacts such as cave paintings, carved figurines, musical instruments, and personal adornments testify to complex symbolic thought. These creations required time, skill, and intention, demonstrating that early humans valued beauty, identity, and meaning alongside survival. Art and ritual were not luxuries, but essential technologies for social bonding, emotional regulation, and knowledge transmission. Storytelling occupied a central place in daily life. Around fires, people shared accounts of hunts, migrations, ancestors, and dreams. These stories encoded practical information within emotionally resonant narratives, ensuring retention across generations. Humor, evident in playful carvings and exaggerated figures, relieved tension and reinforced bonds. Spiritual beliefs, though diverse and difficult to reconstruct, were deeply integrated into daily life, shaping attitudes toward animals, death, and the unseen forces governing the world. Death itself was treated with care and ritual. Deliberate burials, often accompanied by grave goods and symbolic materials such as ochre, suggest beliefs in continuity beyond death. Mourning was communal, reinforcing social bonds and preserving memory. The dead remained part of the social world through stories and rituals, blurring the boundary between past and present. Evenings brought the group together around fire once more. Meals were shared, Stories deepened, and the pace of life slowed. As darkness fell, vigilance increased. But so did intimacies. Under unpolluted night skies, stars served as calendars, navigation aids, and mythological anchors. Sleep returned gradually, punctuated by wakeful intervals that maintained awareness and connection. When viewed as a whole, Paleolithic life reveals itself not as a brutal struggle against nature, but as a sophisticated adaptation to it. Survival depended not on domination, but on relationship with land, animals, seasons, fire, and one another. Knowledge was embodied, social structures were flexible, and meaning was woven into daily activity. This understanding forces a re-evaluation of modern assumptions about progress. Technological advancement has brought undeniable benefits, yet it has also introduced chronic stress, time scarcity, social isolation, and ecological disconnection. The Paleolithic world was dangerous, but it was also coherent. Life unfolded at a human scale, aligned with biological rhythms shaped by millions of years of evolution. The desire to wake slowly, to share meals, to spend time in unstructured social connection, to create art, to tell stories, and to feel part of something larger than oneself, are not modern indulgences or nostalgic fantasies. They are echoes of a deep evolutionary past that continues to shape human psychology. Studying how early humans lived does more than illuminate history. It challenges us to question the structures of contemporary life and reconsider what it truly means to live well. In the end, an ordinary day 40,000 years ago was not empty or primitive. It was full of love, knowledge, cooperation, creativity, and meaning. Humanity did not begin with cities or machines. It began with people waking together at dawn, tending a shared fire, sharing food and stories, and facing an uncertain world, not alone, but together.